Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Long Road Podcast. The journey goes ever on with the long road. This episode, Adventures in Gold and Dust. We hear from Steve Bonham on his latest travels in America, this time having hiked and road tripped through New Mexico. So this podcast from the Long Road is about our music as a band, writing, stories, anecdotes, interesting people we meet along the way, and who knows what else. My name is Chris Lydon, and I am your host. Obviously, the power is going to my head. I'm taking the first steps towards, radio wave domination, as I've upgraded from probably hosting to seem to be hosting to now I am your host. Who knows what I'll be next time you listen. So, somehow, miraculously, we're on to episode 5. And so far, we've managed to keep to the release a new podcast fortnightly on a Friday thing we decided on all those weeks ago. Although last week we were cutting it fine, and we are this week as well. But nevertheless, and actually the eagle-eyed amongst you will have spotted that the early episodes went up a little ahead of schedule on, not on the Friday, on the Wednesday or Thursday, just as we were working out how the technology works. But it seems to be you upload on a Friday, it goes live on a Friday. Good stuff. Thanks, as always, to everyone from around the globe who's listened to the previous episodes. Just today, we heard from some fans who listened in from Australia. Probably just about as far away geographically as you can get, but they still managed to get a slice of the long road action through their podcast app of choice. Feel free to drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter. Let us know where in the world you listen from. Just search for Steve Bonham on Facebook or at SteveBonham01 on Twitter, or you can find me directly on Twitter on Das Chris Lydon, Lydon. Hopefully you might have spotted an upgrade in the sound quality this week too for some part of this podcast. We took the plunge today and actually set up some real microphones to record the intro and the chat, so you should find it a bit clearer. So, on to today's episode, Adventures in Gold and Dust. This is going to feature a chat that I had with Steve Bonham this morning. Steve is the chief songwriter and instigator of the Long Road. He writes and sings most of our songs, with input from the rest of us at various points. Plays guitar and has recently, he's managed to get his gnashes around a gob iron as well, a harmonica for those not in the know. Steve has just returned from a trip to New Mexico, which is another part of our Gone to Look for America project. So we're going to hear about his and his travelling companions' trips in the RV down Route 66, hikes through the wilderness, avoiding the flash floods and the hurricanes, tales of meeting Billy the Kid's third cousin or something like that, and how Steve ended up at the wrong Las Vegas. And it sounds like some chicken wings that definitely had something to say on the matter. So we start off with a chat between me and Steve when he was back in the UK. Then in the middle we hear some various bits of live sort of travelogue thing that Steve was recording when he was out on the trail. And that's where you'll see the audio quality drops back to the phone microphone standard. And then a little bit of what's next with me and Steve again at the end. So I'll see you on the other side. Enjoy. So you made it back from New Mexico. Why the hell did you go to New Mexico? What's the bigger picture here?
I went to New Mexico because I was meaning to go to Virginia, actually. Or Vermont. Was it Vermont? I don't know. But this friend of mine is an academic. He lives in New Mexico, and he bombarded me with details of New Mexico until I eventually sort of started to read them and thought, yeah, that looks a cool place. And I just you know how I write songs. To me, you've got to kind of go and get some raw materials, get some clay, get some dirt under your fingernails about stuff, and then trust the process, trust that stuff's going to come out, and you think, hell, that's going to be a great song, or that's interesting, And having finished those 2 albums, I wanted, with the winter coming and the snows and the hibernation of the artistic world for a few months, I thought I'd lock myself in his house and burn some logs and write some songs. So I need some stuff. And it was also, in the past, I've tended to do a lot of it hiking. This is going to be a mixture of hiking and driving. So I got one of those big vans that the Americans like and potted around. It worked. I mean, New Mexico is a extraordinary place. Yeah, we're very snobby about America here, particularly at the moment, I think. And we think, place doesn't have any history. Look at ours, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
They've actually got much more history than you can ever believe, It's just, you've got to be open to it. And it was just great to be out there on the non-tourist trail, When we went to places and did things and met people that you'd never meet if you went on a tourist trail. It's the vagabond approach, Fish.
Yeah. So I started getting messages from you, mid-trip, voice messages, recordings a little bit. So you sort of, every so often you'd come up for air and record me a message for this very podcast.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. In the Bandelier Wilderness and Panning for Gold by Route 66, and then there were some bits about the 2 Las Vegases.
Yeah, the 2 Las Vegases. I went to the wrong one, I wondered why there seemed to be, British Airways flights to a very small town, but then that's how learning goes. Yeah.
And from what we checked this morning for our fact checking purposes, the lady who was the only person to be executed in New Mexico since its incorporation into the United States.
That's technically probably very true.
That's what Wikipedia says.
Poor old thing. It's poor young thing, wasn't it? Yeah. It was. You kind of enter the stream of chance, the ricochets of chance that you just find stuff. When you're on the road, you spend a lot of time just sitting with your back against a rock thinking about life. So I thought I'd send you some bits to keep you amused.
The first one in particular, you sound not spaced out, but just at peace with the world.
At peace with the world.
You're experiencing life.
Yeah, no, that was the first one. Was I think we just landed, so I think the enormity of what we're doing was hitting me, and you drive out of Las Vegas 1, and you're soon in the middle of nowhere, and just standing outside listening to the stars. Can you listen to the stars, Bishop? Is that actually possible? That's very worrying.
Well, let's get on and let's. So I'm going to piece these voice messages together, and we'll and you'll get a sense of the journey that Steve's been on in the last 2-3 weeks, and then maybe we'll get to the side of it and we'll see what is going on in Steve's brain now about what's next.
Day 1 of the Golden Dust Tour. She's coming to you, Bishop, from the middle of the Arizona desert. I'm standing under the Milky Way outside this RV. RV apparently is not an old Latin term, but a recreation vehicle. It's basically a large tin shed on wheels. It's absolutely beautiful out here, actually. It's absolutely stunning. Anyway, we flew into Las Vegas last night. Las Vegas is a lot less trashy than I imagined. And we picked up this vehicle and drove past the Hoover Dam and through the desert. Very beautiful evening. My dear companion, Fee, who is a gold prospecting girl, kept saying, we're passing another significant claim. Anyway, we've just stopped now. It's about 8:30 at night and feeling pretty jet lagged. getting up early in the morning and heading on to New Mexico. Over and out. Well, Bishop, this is message number 2. Took a week to get to you. It's just been one of them things. So where am I? Where I am now, I'm in the Bandelier Wilderness. I'm sitting, you can probably hear the river stream in the background. Upstream, my friend is panning for gold. It's been quite a week. Yeah, we rode from Las Vegas up the Route 66, the Mother Road, to eventually the Zuni Pueblo. This an unbelievable place. This is where the Native Americans, before the Native Americans, have lived for thousands of years. The scholars and academics say 12,000, they say at least 50, and I'm not going to argue with them. They were primarily a farming folk, and are desperately trying to maintain their culture and their traditions, and it's fantastic to see. You can't just wander around there taking photographs. It's controlled, and you ask permissions for things. We were lucky when we were there. It was the weekend of a sort of arts festival. Most of them now make a living not by farming, of course. Big agriculture was done in for any small holding. What they make their living from, 70% of them make their living from native arts, particularly pottery and silver, worked into turquoise. It's brilliant stuff. And they're just really friendly, and we hung out there for 2 or 3 days. Had a good time. Lots of thoughts I need to get down and together when I get home. The big thought I had was how really we've got to let go of this idea that we are more sophisticated. I don't think there's anything more sophisticated from us to Zuni people. We just interpret our world in different ways. Perhaps our technology is more sophisticated, but that's about it. Certainly morally and emotionally, I wouldn't like to call it. I found them wonderful and generous people. Anyway, whilst I was there, we hung out on a kind of hippie RV camp called the Ancient Ways, a mixture of Navajo, Indian and, as I say, hippie. Indian in this case, meaning Hindu and Buddhist, I think. It was fun. I ended up playing an impromptu session at the end of Saturday evening there, which was great fun. We then drove across to the Pecos Mountains. They've beaten us a little bit, I think. There's early snow and very cold, and variable weather. So we've had some hikes, and then yesterday rather, we set off into the Bandelier Wilderness. We walked up a gorge. Actually, we walked up a gorge too far. We walked up the gorge last hour by head torch, which was quite intimidating in the dark, with warnings about flash floods ringing in your ears. Eventually, we found our way out up onto a bit of a plain between more of these extraordinary rocks around us. It's been a very cold night out here. And so here we are. We're going to head on for another couple of days and then get back to the RV sometime. New Mexico. Every square inch of this place seems to have a story. There's a story of around the Zunis, their creation story. You could write a bloody opera about it. The way they came out of the Grand Canyon, were told by the Old Father to find a middle place, and given the heart of Mother Earth to look after. And then one part of the tribe kept walking around to find a middle place, and the other half stayed looking after the heart of Mother Earth. And on the way, the wandering tribe, some people would stop, give up, and they created one of these pueblos, until after a while the wanderers re-met the heart, the guardians of the heart of Mother Earth, and realised this was the middle place, and you can go to it. It's nothing special to look at, but deeply, deeply significant for an interesting and lovely group of people. And more songs. Las Vegas, as I now know, there are two. The one you're thinking of, full of gamblers and slots machines and Tom Jones stripped to the waist. That's one Las Vegas. The Las Vegas in New Mexico is, or was, the most lawless place on the planet. Just about every cowboy film must have had Las Vegas in it. You've got Billy the Kid, you've got Wyatt Earp, Kit Carson. I think here Jesse James tried to enlist the Kid into his gang. It's one of those towns where the lawless were the law. I bought a book, one of those dime novels. It's got 20 different outlaws and rustlers and gunslingers in it. Great stories, but they all turn out to be in Las Vegas. Anyway, other songs are going to be just this wonderful wilderness, the wildness of it. Just getting back out into taking care of yourself and making sure you're okay. Blooming it. You just never can tell what's going to happen next, can you? So after leaving the Bandelier Wilderness, we headed to, as I mentioned, to Las Vegas. Not the gambling capital of Nevada, but Las Vegas, a 2-horse town in New Mexico one day, and now a really nice little place. But it was once one of the most lawless places, as I said, in the West. The town have kind of recently, I guess, has fallen on hard times since those reckless days, and therefore not much happened for 100 years. Many of the original buildings remain, and they're now being renovated. It looks good. It looks cool. We had lunch at a place called the Plaza Hotel, a reminder of the old days, now very genteel and well maintained, hiding behind a past in which Doc Holliday had a dental practice of all things out the back, and more than one man met his fate in the saloon bar. I wanted to follow a story I'd seen on the internet about a woman called Paula Angelo, a hauntingly beautiful face, and she was the first woman or last woman to be hung in New Mexico, and actually ended up hanging her twice because they botched it. Apparently she murdered her lover, who turned out to be a typical man, 4 children, and and a mortgage and a military commission to maintain. I wandered around the town looking for evidence or memories of this incident. Went to the museum and found it locked. Had my hair cut by an Italian war veteran in a creaky old chair in a back street, and then came across a little sign that said the Santa Fe Trail Association. It was a kind of converted shop, and in there were these 2 old timers talking at a table, and I went in and asked them if they knew anything about Paula Angelo. Sure, says one of them, and got up, sit down, and I'll tell you all about her. So he went and locked the door, and we sat down, and these guys were so old, it was fantastic. He told us about what what he knew about her, and how she lived outside the town, and was hung from a cottonwood tree inside the town, which had been cut down. And then he talked a lot about the old days, and then, as often happens in the States, this conversation wandered on to the topic of what's the difference between England, UK, Great Britain, and is Scotland a small city in the southwest of, etc., etc. And then that conversation drifted on to trying to help them discover where names of local people came from. So they talked about Higgins, and I said probably Ireland, and MacLeish, and I said Scotland, and then when a really old guy, Joe Lopez, must have been in his 90s, he'd been in the US Marines in 1949 or something. He said, "Do you know anything about the Bonnies?" I said, "Not sure where they'd come from. It could be Scotland, it could be England." And then I looked at him and said, "But you do know that Billy the Kid, was William Bonney?" And he said, "Sure." And he didn't say anything else, but then his friend turned around and said, "Yeah, Joe is Billy the Kid's third cousin." And so I found myself sitting in a bar with Billy the Kid's third cousin. And I have every reason to believe that's true. He showed me his family tree, and his mother was a Bonnie. And then he looked at me and spoke for the first time in a little while and said, he was a charming man. The ladies, particularly the Spanish ladies, loved him. So that was the day I ended up talking to Billy the Kid's relative. And after that, they sent me out to a little ghost town on the outside of Las Vegas, where Paul Angelo had come from. And we got out there about dusk, and there was actually a few tumble-down houses. This has once been the kind of R&R place for the local Fort Union, and the soldiers used to come in, had 24-hour-a-day gambling. The place was called Loma Pada, and had 24 and women of the night and the day, presumably, if it was 24 hours a day, available, and gambling and drinking and stuff. A lot of stuff, I assume. Anyway, what was interesting was there was a corner of town, there was a couple of ramshackle old houses where people were still living, and that's how I met Ben C. DeBarker, the last man in Loma Pada. He'd worked away when the government had decided the place was going to be a ghost town, and they knocked it down. There's a whole set of stories about what happened there. But he came back and he said, "Well, I'm not a ghost," and he and his grandson has rebuilt his house, and so he lives on the edge of town, refusing to give in, and his family visit him 3 or 4 times a month and make sure he's got food, because it must be at least an hour to the nearest supplies. And what a man. And his grandfather owned a saloon. What days. Well, Bishop, here we are. Last night of the trip, and the noise you can hear in the background tonight is Las Vegas. About 2 hours ago, we crested the hill, a ridge coming out of the desert, and there it was, Las Vegas, glittering in a sea of fool's gold and starlight. So we're on what's called an RV camp in the middle of town. Across the road is the Longhorn Casino, which sells, well, I actually had to ask the waitress whether I was drinking alcoholic or non-alcoholic beer, which has brought me back down to earth with a bump. I mean, most of the beer on this tour has been pretty good. And also some chicken wings, which may test the dodgy plumbing of this vehicle one more time tonight. Anyway, It's been an incredible trip. We've done 2,500 miles. We've spent 6 days, maybe 7, out in the wilderness on foot. Forded rivers and climbed hills and got down into valleys and canyons. I met, of course, Billy the Kid's third cousin, and I have every reason to believe that's true. I've spent time with the Zuni people, which was, as I said before, was incredibly moving. And so here I am back in Las Vegas. A significant part of the vehicle is still in the Grand Canyon, which is going to take some explaining in the morning. But yeah, it's been a good trip, and certainly some songs. I wrote down a list of songs I'm working on at the moment. Most of them won't make the album, much to your probable relief, but there's a good bunch of them to be gone at. See if I can find them in my little notebook later tonight. Here we go. So these are the ones I am working on now. One called Star Sailing. One I was working on with Kev before I came away, called Waiting on a Storm. Another one I was working on with Kev called Ghost Dancing. There's one called If There's a God Out There, which is just about how tough it was in Tennessee. Silver Girl, Silver Moon's finished, and we got a live version of that in the studio. I'm kind of working on some good old country songs, and I've got one coming along called The Hurting Kind. There's Catch Me When I Fall, which we tried out a couple of years ago, I think. And we had Catherine Tickell playing fiddle on it on the stage, but I think we should go back to that. And then there's the Ballad of the Angel of the Grey Hill, which is about Paula Angela. And then there's one called, tentative title, Last Man in the Ghost Town of My Days, which is just dedicated to the magnificent Ben C. DeBarker, whose grandfather owned a saloon and he refuses to leave the town he's in. And then one which came to me today as I was sitting on the Route 66 coming back here, fretting a bit about the missing pieces to the RV, which was you make the world go round in its own particular way. So anyway, back to England tomorrow. Looking forward to it, and getting down to do some work and some gigs. And of course the great news, whilst I was away, I had the American tour confirmed, and an inquiry today from a German promoter. So it's all go, tally ho.
So did the RV survive the chicken wings? That's the question that's on everybody's mind now.
No, it didn't. No.
And you mysteriously talk about a bit of missing RV.
Yes, very expensive piece of the RV is in the Grand Canyon now. And I wish to draw a veil over that whole episode of RV damage and American litigation.
Oh, fine. Was this your final trip to America? I'll never let you back in now.
Well, in an RV perhaps. Yeah, I think it'll be Harley Davidson next.
Fine.
So there are no toilets in a Harley Davidson.
So what's next? What's going to be the outcomes from this? This trip,
well,
do you think?
I think there is. I mean, just there's so much there. It's just how can you even start with a place like that? There's certainly a whole bunch of new songs.
Yeah.
And also, I think kind of it was nice to do that after we'd done particularly the Rattlesnake album, because it kind of takes us to the next step of that stage. You know, it kind of felt going into New Mexico, having done the album, kind of you were looking at I look at the world through different eyes to when I went into Tennessee, and it's just very clear now that the way America works is just so very different, you know, to the way we think about things. And it's interesting that we've just had the midterm elections, the last 2 days. And, when I went to New Mexico, I got none of that. I just got a lot of kindness and a lot of people just wanted to spend a time a day, lots of memories, lots of things. I think there's some big stuff to be, there's some big stuff to be done around the idea of the Zuni people and the kind of the way we travel through time. And there's very specific stories about Bensi Dabaka, working on the last man standing. Yeah. But the winter's coming now, Bishop. We shall put on our woolly boots and should get on. We got an album to write for next year. We've got tours to fix.
So say some more about the American tour.
That happened whilst I was away. It's in March. It's a solo thing, but I think that's part of our plan is for me to do some solo stuff and then build some traction in America, and then take the band over hopefully later in 2019. And it's with our old chum Rob McHale, and it's a series of gigs in Carolina in March. So
North Carolina.
Yes,
I remember when we met up with Rob earlier this year. It was very clear that he's from North Carolina, not South Carolina.
Yeah,
they're quite different places.
Yeah. So that's gonna be fun. That's gonna be really interesting.
Great.
And then. Then the other things we've got a huge agenda, haven't we? So we're going to crack on with all that stuff. Yeah. But memorable. It'll take me a few weeks actually to distill out everything,
Yeah.
But I have a bag of clay.
And no doubt in the coming weeks and months we'll hear more about what gets made out of that bag of clay that Steve's collected from his travels. So here we are at the end of this week's The Long Road podcast. Episode 6, the next episode, will be released in 2 weeks' time on Friday the 23rd of November 2018. So do check back then. We've got plans afoot for what the final 3 episodes of the year will entail. The mysterious, as you might have worked out, the final episode date would be, I think, Friday the 21st of December. So terrifyingly close to Christmas. So we're trying to work out what a Christmas episode might look like. But you'll hear eventually. We've got to do it, so you'll find out. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast from. You should find us there. Listen to the previous episodes from The Long Road on vagabondphilosopher.com. That's our website. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Bonham01 for Steve. I am on Das Chris Lydon, Lydon. Kev is on More Music, Moore Music, and John's not on Twitter yet. Search for us on Facebook, look for Steve Bonham, and you can connect with us on there, and you can see some of our videos, other bits and bobs. You can have a listen to full tracks from our albums on Spotify. We put some samples up on there. You can buy the complete albums. They're called The Girl with the Rattlesnake Heart and Reliance, and Steve's new book, A Beautiful Broken Dream, at vagabondphilosopher.com. Now remember, if you buy the book, you get a code that gets you 10 free track downloads as well. So you can kind of build your own album. And you get to give a friend a code that gives them 10 free track downloads as well. So the joy can be spread around. So thanks once again for listening, and the journey with The Long Road continues in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.